My name is Asia Sampson, and today on Baptism Overland, we're installing a chase light. Woot woot! That's the sound I imagine this thing would make if it made sound. This is the X-Prite 36-inch LZ Series chase light. In full transparency, this has been nothing but a thorn in my side. It all started about 3.5 weeks ago when I ordered the RZ series from them. And because of snowstorms that was plaguing the country, there was a huge delay for it to be sent to me. I finally got it about a week and a half later, looked at it, and I really didn't like the RZ series very much because the lights are cleaner, but inside they put like a colored film, the red, the yellows, and the whites, and it just looked funny. I didn't want this rainbow colored chase light in the back of the Jeep where you can see the colors. I wanted something that was just purely white all throughout, but when you light it up, it has the different colors. It didn't seem like that on the website. I mean, now that I look at it, you can see it, but I didn't think that it would be that prominent. And this was really the first red flag because when you do work with a reputable company, usually when you want to return something, they make it easy. They give you a printing label and you can send it right back. But Xprite on their website says, we do not provide shipping labels. You have to send this back on your own volition. So I took the light, post office, mailed it off to them, and they received it last Saturday, and I still hadn't gotten my refund. So I tried calling, I tried messaging, and I kept calling the same number over and over and over, and it would say that the voicemail is full. So I said, okay, let me try texting this number and see. And I texted it, and it was a cell phone, which means that that's red flag number 2, that you don't even have an office landline or an 800 number. So I texted it and I said, hey, I've been trying to get in touch with somebody there. No one's gotten back to me. And then she texts back with saying, well, this is the wholesale number. I'll forward you to customer service and have someone get back to you. And this was like 3 days later, matter of fact, like yesterday. So they finally emailed me back. No one called me back and said that, okay, we will process your refund. Now, a day later, I still haven't seen anything in my bank. I'm going to give it a couple more days before I try to file a dispute. So that takes care of that light. In the interim, I went to Amazon and ordered the LZ series, which is the white all the way throughout. And I like it. And this time, because it's through Amazon, if I have any issues with this, it'll be a lot easier to return. I say all that to say, if you are a fan of customer service, just know that you are not going to get that support. In fact, when I was finally messaging her and I said that I was trying to call, they said, it's better to text or to email. But like, are you a company that doesn't take phone calls? Like, what is up with that? And at the same time, I'm waiting for an email to come in that has never come in until days later. You're better off ordering it from Amazon and make it a lot easier on yourself. Plus, it ships faster that way too. So this is the Xprite 36-inch LZ Series chase light. To be honest, I really wanted the KC Highlight or the Baja Design chase light. Only problem is those run somewhere around $375 and $400 or so, give or take. And I didn't know if I could justify spending that much on a light that I probably will never use. The chase light that I want to install on the Jeep will only be used for off-road use. I don't want it to be a daily thing where it's on and it's showing my turn signals and my stop and running lights, simply because it's so high up there that I don't know if it's going to be causing legal issues here in the state of Florida, and I just don't want to take the chance of being pulled over because I have these lights up at the very top. This came in at $99. It sounds really cheap, and you would think that maybe the quality might be horrible, but looking at all the reviews I have seen online, a lot of people love this light. They say it's super bright, it's pretty stout. I mean, it's made of aluminum, it's not plastic, so not gonna break this thing. With all those reviews, it was worth spending the $99, although granted, what you're giving up is really good customer service as opposed to what you'd get with KC or Baja. What's good about this compared to the KC Highlight and the Baja designs, the KC Highlight and Baja, when you buy them, all you get is the light and all the wiring that comes out of it. That's it. You have to rig up your entire harness yourself. Meaning if you want your stop light, your running light, your turn signals, strobe, all that stuff that you want to happen with this chase light, you have to do the rigging yourself. And they don't provide you a strobing module for the light. The ambers that are on all these lights, they have different patterns and they're able to switch patterns for different kind of strobing effects, but because they don't provide you with a strobing module, you'll have to wire one up yourself. This, however, gives you everything that you need. So you get the light, and then you get two different kind of switches that you can use. You don't use both of them, but one kind is the rocker switch. The rocker switch is probably what I'm going to go with. The way this is oriented, it's a three-way switch. It's off when it's up like this to the very top. If you want to turn it on, you move it to the middle, and that basically turns the entire unit on. And then to toggle between the different patterns of strobes, you just press the bottom until you find a pattern that you like. And when you're ready to turn the whole thing off, you just hold it down, and then the strobes will go off, but it will still keep the light on. And then when you want to shut off the whole thing, you just turn it off at the very top. That same situation is how it looks like on the switch that you could put if you don't want the rocker switch. This is the kind that you kind of just lay on your vehicle and they'll just kind of flop around, maybe under the seat or something, and you can reach it. This one has the on off up here, and then you can toggle the different patterns with this. So you get all that. You obviously get the mounting bolts, and then you also get the instruction manual, or the lack thereof. It's a 5x7 and it's only printed on one side. So this is all you get. And I say this because you need to be pretty familiar with wiring. If you are not familiar with wiring auxiliary lights, then stop this video and go learn and read up on how to wire auxiliary lights, because the things I might talk about might get a little bit confusing. But if you're pretty familiar with wiring, then proceed, because this is all pretty standard. What you will need to do though is you're going to need to get some sort of extension, because this is the switch, either that or this. And the line for this, and then the line that's coming out of the light itself, you plug together, but it's not long enough for it to reach from the back of your vehicle all the way to the cabin where you're going to mount your switch. They do sell an extension, and I'll put the link below, and it's about $14 also on Amazon. So that makes it a lot easier to wire the thing up. I mean, you can cut it up and try to figure out what wire is what, but make it easy on yourself and buy the extension. It's a 3-pin extension, and then you'll just be good to go right off the bat. And then from there, you just plug everything up the way it says here. It tells you all the colors of what does what. And then if you are, again, familiar with wiring, this should be easy. So that's what you get with this light. I think it's a solid light. I think it's going to be great. And based on the reviews, it's super bright and super reliable. $99, and you get everything that you need to get it going. You just have to give up maybe the customer service support thing. If that's important to you, then look elsewhere. Maybe in the future, I can see myself spending the $400 for a KC or a Baja design, but if this lasts me for as long as I would hope it lasts me, then I'm good to go with this. Okay, so let's talk wiring, because the wiring setup for this is not your typical wiring setup like you would with any other auxiliary light, where you just have the one light, plug it to a positive, negative, and have a switch. You're controlling 3 different kind of lights here, and you're going to need to know how to manage those wires and connections accordingly. Here you have 2 red lights at the very end, which will sync up with your stop or your brake lights. And then next to that, you have your amber lights, which syncs up with your turn signals. So anytime you signal left or signal right, or you hit your hazards, those will go on. But they're also hooked up to a switch so that you can control the strobing and make it strobe. And in between all of this, you have your 2 white lights. These sync up to your reverse lights, so every time you go on reverse, these will light up. Or you could have it to a switch where you can flick the switch and light up everything behind you as your rear lights or for scenery. So you have 3 lights going on. We're going to go through each of these one at a time so you'll know how exactly they're going to be connected, and what I choose to connect and what I choose not to connect, because that's really up to you on customizing how you want this thing to function. So you have your light, and coming out of that light, you have 2 wire bundles. The first bundle is your power wires. This is what's going to power this thing. This thing will not turn on unless you physically turn it on. You kind of want it to be that way anyway. You don't want it to turn on every time you hit your reverse light or your brake light or your turn signals. You don't want it to start going on, especially if you're daily driving, because the last thing you want is to get pulled over, because it would be illegal to have lights that high up and you have ambers up there and red lights up there. You're not supposed to have that. So it directly goes to a 3-point switch. And then coming out of that switch, you have your positive and your negative. Here is where you need to plug this thing up to something that is ignition triggered, meaning that it won't turn on unless you turn the ignition on. I thought that maybe I could plug it up to the battery, but when I went and tried to do that, I realized that this light, even in the off position, it'll light up. It'll illuminate to show you that there's a button here, and when you press it down, then the bottom part lights up. That will drain your battery because the light stays on. So you don't want to plug this up directly to a battery. You want to plug it up directly to a power source that will only turn on every time you turn the ignition on. Now the second bundle that's coming out of your light, these are your trigger wires. You kind of have to have an understanding of how relays work when it comes to lighting systems. What these do is every time power goes through this, it activates the relay inside the light to tell the light to turn on. So these trigger wires are actually not what's powering your lights. They just power the triggers that turn on your lights. So in this bundle, there are 4 wires coming out, and I have that loom right here. This is the loom that it comes with, and you just plug it into the Xprite system, and then the rest you have to tap into certain wires in your vehicle. The first wire in that bundle is the red wire. This red wire is your brake light trigger. With the Xprite, as soon as you turn the switch on, the red lights will automatically go on both ends of the light. They just stay on as soon as you hit that switch. But by plugging this to your brake light wire, as soon as you hit the brakes, those red lights will shine even brighter. So that's what that's for. The next one after that are the blue and the brown wires. The blue and the brown wires, you wire this to your turn signal wires. So every time you want to make a turn and you signal right or signal left or you hit your hazards, then those yellow ambers on your chase light will start to turn on as well. I've already cut them short because I don't plan on using it. I don't need to be using my turn signals on the trail. And if I do, then what I have on my taillights will suffice. Basically, when I'm hitting the trails, those chase lights are going to be strobing the ambers, and that's all I need it for. So I just cut them short because I'm not going to be using it, but you can definitely splice into your turn signal wires with the red and the blue. And then finally, you have your white wire. The white wire, you splice this into your reverse lights. So every time you hit reverse, then the lights on your chase light as well as your reverse lights on your tail lights, those will all turn on. I don't plan to do it that way though. For me, I'm going to be using this, plugging it directly to the rear light system that I had already had in the Jeep. And every time I hit the switch on my panel, then the 2 white lights in the middle of my chase light will turn on. I say this because I want to be able to use this light without having to go into reverse to do it. So for example, if I just need to light up the area behind me and I want to look in my rear view without having to go into reverse, I can just hit the switch. It will light it up white behind me, and I can also use it at camp. If I needed to light the scenery behind the Jeep, I can just flick the switch on and it will light up the white wires. So this will actually get plugged into my existing wiring. So there are your 2 bundles of wires. Now, before I go into each of these sections individually, I need you guys to also understand this. You'll need to purchase an extension cord, and it's right here. This extension cord will allow you to get the positive and negative wires from the chase light to reach from the back upper part of your vehicle all the way to wherever your power source is going to be. Now, how I plan to power this thing up, like I said, do not plug this into the battery because this switch will drain your battery because the light stays on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this into an ignition driven wire. I haven't yet decided if I'm going to tap into the cigarette lighter that's on my dash or just get a fuse tap and then tap into my fuse box where there's an ignition wire there. In my fuse box, there's already a fuse tap there that goes into my Apollo Intec. So I don't really want to crowd that area with a lot of wires, but I might just go ahead and splice this into that wire also and then just call it a day. I'll figure it out as I start doing the wiring, which is the most convenient one to access. Now, when it comes to the individual lights itself, let's start with the strobing amber lights. This one is pretty much done deal. If you're not going to be plugging this into your right and left turn signals, which is really easy, again, just plug in the blue and the brown wires and tap into those. But if you're not going to use it that way, the way I'm not going to use them, then your ambers are already done. As soon as this thing gets powered and it's in its on position, you can start toggling this and then it will automatically turn on those ambers. So that takes care of the amber lights. Now with the rear lights. The rear lights, again, I am not going to be using this in coordination with my reverse lights. My reverse lights will remain on my tail light. So all I need to do for this one is tap into the switch pod that I already have. If you've watched my channel, then you'll know I've already had reverse lights on this thing. It's wired up to my Apollo Intec. It's hooked up to a switch that's inside the cabin on my panel, and every time I hit that switch, the lights light up. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm removing the rear lights that I already have, and then I'm going to be replacing those lights with the two white lights that are in the middle of this chase light now. So when I remove these rear lights that I already have, I'm just going to remove the lights, but I'm going to keep the wiring on there. That way I can access it easier. It's already routed to my Apollo Intec. I don't need to touch it. The good thing about this though is because all I need to do really is to activate the trigger on this thing, then the negative line that I've had running from the Apollo Intec to my rear lights before, I won't be needing to use that anymore. All I actually need to do is use the positive wire that's coming from the switch pod all the way to the new chase lights and tapping into this. And then every time I hit the rear light switch inside the cabin, then those rear lights will turn on at my will without me having to go in reverse. And then finally, we have the two red lights at the end. As I mentioned, as soon as you turn this switch on, those red lights will automatically turn on already. Now, personally, I wish there was a way that I could turn that on and off so that it's not constantly on. So especially if I'm at camp and I want to light up the scenery with white lights, I don't have the red lights also being on at the same time. But I don't want to go in there and kind of search for which wire is what. So I'm just going to leave it alone and it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. That being said, with the two red lights already turning on automatically, there's nothing I really need to do for that either. I just need to tap the red trigger wire to my brake light wire so that every time I hit the brakes, those red lights will shine even brighter. So that's basically the schematic. It might be confusing to some of you, but if you are pretty familiar with wiring, then this should be pretty standard. All right, but before we start wiring everything up, let's go ahead and mount the light to the roof rack first. That way we can see where all the wires are going. We can make sure they're all plugged into the right places, and then we can test to see if this thing works. Now, the way I'm going to be mounting this thing is basically the same way I mounted my shovel. I'm going to take a steel bar and I'm going to create two brackets out of it, a flat bracket and an L bracket. These two brackets will then sandwich the walls of the roof rack with nuts and bolts. And then where the L part comes out, that's where I'm going to rest the brackets on the chase light, and it'll sit right up there and then bolt them into place there. That way I don't have to use zip ties or whatever it is other people have done to secure this thing on their roof rack. Then once I have these brackets loosely pinned to the back of the roof rack, then I can move it from side to side until I get the right distance for the chase light to sit on. Then I'll just center it so I'll know exactly where it needs to go, and then figure out where the holes are, and then bolt that down, and then tighten everything. And then once I know it fits really, really well, I'll clean up the brackets, paint them, and then they should look really good and super clean. So let's go make the brackets. Alright, so I got everything pretty much wired up. I just didn't hide the wires yet because I want to be able to see all the connections. But there is the chase light bar. Coming out of that are the two wires that I talked to you about. They both come down the pillar of the roof rack. Those are your trigger wires. I have the white one right now going to the wire that's going to the switch pod that controls my rear lights. The power wire comes down here. Then from there, it goes right into that 3-point switch. And then from the switch, it comes right back out to your positive and negative. And then the negative part of it, I have it directly tied to my switch pod because I know that that's already wired really well. And on the positive side, I twist tied it over to this other wire that runs all the way to the fuse box. And in the fuse box, I tapped into the positive wire of my Apollo Intech, which uses a fuse tap to go into the accessory fuse inside the fuse box. So that's the wiring. Let's see if it all works. All right, so we're ready to test this out. I have my son here. He's gonna let me know if it's working. You ready to check it out?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. All right, so now that I know everything is working and it's working perfectly, all I need to do now is install the switch somewhere in the dash. Then I'll clean up all the wiring, and then I also still have to tap into that brake light so that those brake lights go brighter whenever I hit the brakes. So let's go install the switch. So this is the spot where I plan to put the switch. I think it's the perfect spot because it's empty back here. Plus, you can remove this panel, which gives you access to the wiring very, very easily. Alright, so the chase light is finally installed, fully complete, all the wires hidden, and we're pretty much done. So I'll just walk you through it one more time. There is the chase light. Out of that, you have 2 bundles coming out. And then those 2 bundles of wires go down the side of my roof rack rail. Right there is the first bundle that has all the trigger wires. That bundle then enters into the same area where my license plate wiring goes. The blue and brown trigger wires are not being used. The white one goes directly to my switch pod, which controls the rear lights. Now that wire goes directly to the switch pod here, connecting to the 5th positive terminal of the switch pod. And then from the switch pod, it connects directly to the 5th switch right there, which is my rear light switch. And whenever I press that, the 2 white lights on the chase light will turn on, acting as my rear or scenery lights. Now, as far as the red trigger wire that will trigger the red lights on the chase light to shine brighter every time I hit the brakes, that's actually tapped into the yellow white wire behind the taillight. Now, as far as the power wire, that snakes all the way down as well to right underneath the bumper and then comes around the wheel well. From there, it goes underneath the vehicle inside my rock rails and then up to the engine bay. It then comes in up from the engine bay and through the firewall. And then that wire, which is the extension, connects to the plug, which I've installed right here. And then that plug then comes out with a positive and negative. The ground wire I was able to put behind this larger ground wire that I had from my distribution block. That way I don't have to route it right back to the engine for a ground. So it's right in there. But the positive wire comes back out to the engine, travels down along the back, and that again is already tapped into my fuse box that I showed you earlier. All right, if you've made it this far, congratulations. I promise I won't hold you any longer. I know this video is super long and you probably skipped around. That's totally okay, but I had to do it this way. I wanted to make sure that I created a video that was complete, that you come here, watch this one video, and you're done, and you'll know everything you need to know about the company, about the product, and about how to install it. I won't get into the company anymore. We talked about that already, but I will say, as far as the light is concerned, the product is solid, super bright, worth the $99 and a little bit of the headache that I had to deal with. A couple of little things that I didn't like that you may also want to consider. One, they don't give you that extension. So you have to go purchase that extension for yourself because that cord will just not reach from the back of the vehicle all the way to the cabin. And I get why they didn't include the extension with the kit. I mean, these chase lights were specifically made for side-by-sides and smaller off-road vehicles that wherever you mount it, the cord is sufficiently long enough that you can control it from anywhere. It's only recently that the Overlander guys decided to use this in their rigs because it's very useful. So I know that that's why they probably sell the extension cord, so that if you decide to put it on a larger vehicle like a Jeep or a 4Runner or any truck, then you'll have the cord long enough for you to be able to utilize these switches. But speaking of extension, what I didn't like was that there is a little nut that you use that when you put the two extension cords together, they come in, it's three-pronged, and then you take this nut and then you roll it over both connections and then screw it in. And that's what keeps the connection tight so that it won't pop off. I wish that they would have put that nut on the switch side, the shorter cable that goes out of your switch. That way you can manage it, because what happened is they put it on the extension side. So now try routing that wire throughout the vehicle and making sure that that nut goes along with it. Like, it kept slipping down the cable every time I tried to go up the engine bay. It kept slipping right back down because it's not held at the very end. And then when I finally was able to fish it through the engine bay to get it up to the end, good luck trying to get it through the firewall because that thing is pretty thick. So what I ended up doing was cutting it off lengthwise so I can slip it off the cable. Then I went inside the vehicle where the cable was already fed through the firewall, slip it back on, and then put the two connections together, rolled it over, but because now it's split, it's not going to hold in place. Then I took a zip tie, put a zip tie around it, tightened it so it basically holds the clamp together. Design-wise, they should have put that nut on the shorter end where it's already inside your vehicle. So all you have to do is feed the extension through the firewall. It's in there, and then when you get inside, you can put it together and then screw it closed. So that's the only thing. Otherwise, the light is solid. Light is great, and everything I've plugged it up to, it works. So that's all I could really ask for. Anyway, I hope this video was informative, albeit very, very long, but I hope you got a lot out of it. If you did, make sure you like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and also follow us on Instagram at Baptism Overland. My name is Asia Sampson, and I will see you next time.